Which brings us to programming your mind for success. But before we do that, I'd like you to fill out this little exercise here and write down the worry situation, the things that you're worried about, and they're basically 4 or 5 categories. They're your relationships with other people, they're money, business, they have to do with health, they have to do with sales, income, and maybe things that have to do with other people and not in your business. So write down 3 to 5 things that you are worried about, and write down the worst possible thing that could happen. What's the worst that could happen if everything went to hell in a handbasket? And then fill out number 2. What specific steps will you take immediately to improve upon the worst possible outcomes in the first 3 above? What specific things will you do? What decisions will you make? What will you get into or get out of? And then finally, what one action are you going to take immediately to stop worrying and start living? One last point with regard to worry or negativity of any kind. Vince Lombardi once wrote these wonderful words. He said, "Fatigue doth make cowards of us all." And if we get really tired or worn out, especially physically tired or emotionally tired because we're in an emotionally stressful situation, and you get worn out, everything becomes exaggerated. You become more worried about small worries, you become angrier about small irritations, you become more depressed about reversals, you become fatalistic and think about quitting. So sometimes the very best thing you can possibly do is to just shut it all off and get a good night's sleep. Just go to bed early and just get a good night's sleep, and just sleep 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 hours. Everybody's had the experience where they just say, I don't have to get up tomorrow morning, I'm just going to sleep until I can't sleep anymore. You sleep 10 hours and you can hardly believe it. And then all of those things that were bothering you the day before, well, they weren't really that important. So sometimes it's really important to get lots and lots of rest. In the Jewish religion, there's what is called a Sabbath. And it's been one of my favorite concepts for years. There was a wonderful book written on it by a Jewish scholar about the Sabbath. And a Sabbath is they stop work at 6 o'clock on Friday, and then they take all of Saturday is the Sabbath, and they don't do anything. Now, they don't work, they don't catch up on their books, they don't even do anything intense. They just relax, spend time with the family, maybe in our time go for a walk, go to a movie, and so on. And it keeps going for 36 hours. It goes till 6 o'clock Sunday morning. And so what that means is you get 2 really good sleeps. I always think of sleeps. How many sleeps did you get? When Barbara and I go on a vacation, we find that you've got to be away for at least 2 sleeps. You can't go on a vacation on Saturday to a nice place, sleep there Sunday, come back and then come back Sunday. It's not enough time for a vacation. 3 sleeps is better, but 2 sleeps is the minimum. But a Sabbath gives you 2 sleeps. It gives you 2 full nights of sleep where you completely relax, and you'll find that if after that 36 hours, the whole world looks different. You're much more relaxed, you're more positive, you see more possibilities, you're more creative, you see things that you can do, you have the energy to take actions, and so on. So sometimes if you get really tired or if you get burned out emotionally because of a stressful situation, the smartest thing you can do is nothing. Just relax, just back off and get lots and lots of sleep. It really help you. Okay, moving right along here, programming your mind for success. You know that a computer, if you program a computer, it simply operates on the basis of the computer, on the basis of the programming. If you want to get different results in your outer world, you have to put in a different program for your mental programmer. So this is how we do it. We say your self-concept is your bundle of beliefs inside that determines everything that happens to you. Remember, all change begins with a change in your self-concept, the way you see yourself and think about yourself and believe about yourself. There was a man many years ago, very famous, true story. His name was Victor Sarabriakov. And I learned this story from Zig Ziglar. And Victor Sarabriakov was the parent of immigrant laborers who came over from Russia. And he grew up and he went to school. And he seemed to float through school. He did whatever schoolwork was necessary. But he daydreamed a lot. And sometimes he read other things and looked out the window. And they concluded that he was probably mentally retarded, did not really have, he had learning deficiencies, wasn't really set up to be very successful, and so he was just passed through on the never, never, never get failed plan, you know, where they just keep passing the problem kids on to the next grade and it doesn't come back. And so he went all the way up to the 10th, 12th grade, and he was still looking out the window, and he sat down with his counselor in the 12th grade, and they suggested that he join the Army. Because in the Army, he could get a nice job, you know, cleaning latrines or being a carpenter or driving a truck, where they would provide for him for 25 or 30 years, and then he could have a nice pension, and he could retire, and he would be safe and secure. And he didn't think much about that, so he left school and he drifted, and he worked as a farm laborer, and he worked as a janitor, and he worked cleaning up motels, and he just drifted across the country. And one day, when he was down on his luck, about 2 years later, he'd been drifting around, he's now about 20 years old, he saw a sign, you know, the Army needs men. And he remembered the recommendation from his guidance counselor in high school, so he went in and he applied to enroll, to register, what do they call it, to sign up for the Army. Pardon? To enlist, yes, to enlist, thank you. So he went in to enlist, and they said fine, and his background was average grades in high school and labor for 2 years, not great Army material. So they gave him a battery of psychological and intelligence tests. When they came back with the tests, his IQ scored at 172. And they said, no, there's something wrong here with this test, this score. So they tested him again. They had him take the test again, came out at 176. His IQ was higher than Einstein's of 170. They couldn't believe it. They took him in and they sat him down, and they said, Mr. Serebryakov, you're one of the smartest. You're the smartest person who's ever tried to enlist in the Army. And he said, yeah, but I got terrible grades throughout school. And they had a psychologist there, and he said, well, it's because you basically have a photographic memory. You memorized everything there was to learn in school the instant it was first mentioned. It was completely boring for you. That's why you were looking out the window all the time. He said, that's true. He said, I never failed an exam because he learned everything like a sponge absorbs water. They said, Mr. Serebryakov, if you'll join the Army and you'll go into our nuclear physicist training, we will put you through university if you will stay in the Army for 4 years after your degree. And he said, sounds good to me. And so he did. He went through, first of all, he had to retake high school. He finished all of high school in a year, took 4 years of university, very tough courses in 18 months, took the PhD in a year and a half, and he had his PhD by the time he was 25 and a half years old. Then he went to work for the Army for 4 years. While he was there, he developed 2 or 3 new technologies, defense technologies, that 2 of which the Army was very interested in. The others said, we're not interested in this. When his time was up at 30, he started his own company, which is in Los Angeles, and Serebryakov Industries. Within something like 2 years, he had 6 major high-tech patents, each of which was sold and licensed for millions of dollars. By the time he was 35, he still lives in Los Angeles today. He's worth millions and millions of dollars, one of the brightest people that they'd ever seen in terms of his creative ability. But he didn't know. He'd been programmed from his poor parents and his poor kids in his childhood and the teachers that paid no attention to him to believe he was not very smart. And when they finally showed him how smart he was, he just changed his programming. When he changed his programming, this guy became a mental machine. He was a genius of the highest order. So it's very possible for us to change all of our external results by changing our programming about ourselves. So how do we do this? We say all change begins by you taking in new information that changes your self-concept. New information that changes your self-concept. So that you start to see your world and you start to believe about yourself in a different way. If someone were to say to you, and I do this all the time, by the way, David and I used to go into restaurants or various places, and the person would be really, really nice and really, really helpful. And I say to David, I say, what kind of a future does that person have? And he'd say, she has a great future. And then we go into a place where they're rude and indifferent and uncaring. I say, what kind of a future does he have? And David would say, he has no future at all. And so we divide people into people with future, no future. And you can tell people with future because the way they do their job in the moment is the best predictor of their future. And so when I go into a place and the person is really, really helpful, I will call them and take them aside, and I'll say, you know something, you're going to be a big success. You are going to be a big success later in life. This is my area of specialty, and I know that. And they say, no, well, you don't realize, and they're young people, and they're working hard. And I said, no, you have star quality. You're going to be a big success in life. And I just leave them with that like a big tip. I also leave a tip. I just leave them with, I will stop and turn around, and I'll go back to people that I've met in passing, and I'll say, you know, you have incredible qualities. You're going to be a big success in life. And I've always told my children that. They're going to be a big success in life. And sometimes one person who they respect, an important person, well-dressed, customer, who tells them that will change their self-concept forever. Now, will it work consistently? Who knows? But you know that you miss every shot you don't take. So whenever I get a chance to take a shot, to put in an injection that will change a person's self-concept, and I've had countless people have come back to me and say, remember the seminar, I came up to you and I asked you that question, and you told me this, it changed my life forever. And of course, how can I remember? I've spoken to 5 million people. I say, oh yes, I remember you well. And so changes come with changing your belief system. Now, what if there was a special gene for becoming a millionaire? Okay? And this gene could be detected by new DNA testing, some of these gene tests that you have. And you're working along and you're doing well and you're making a good living, you're struggling and so on. And you go in for the doctor does your annual medical, comes back with a gene test. Geez, you got the millionaire gene. I had no idea. You got the millionaire gene. The millionaire gene, yes. You're going to be a millionaire in your adult life, probably in less than 5 years after you decide to become a millionaire. You say, you must be kidding. No, it's been tested. Every single person, every single millionaire who's been tested has this gene. It's a very rare gene. You're going to be a millionaire. You better get going. Find out how you're going to do it. If you walked out of that office absolutely believing that the gene test was right, you'd become like a house on fire. You'd become like a force of nature. Nothing would stop you. You'd say, I'm not going to do work at this chicken shit job anymore. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire in training. Excuse the expression. I'm a millionaire in training. You'd be out looking for opportunities. You know something? You set up a force field of energy that would start to attract ideas to you and people and resources and things like that that would change you completely. So I brought my magic pen. This magic pen was given to me by the gnomes of Zurich, the ones who make all the financial decisions in the world, and by the powers invested in me by the gnomes of Zurich, I hereby declare you all millionaires. From this moment onward, you have the millionaire gene. Your job is simply to realize that you are a millionaire looking for a place to happen. And your job is to go and find a place to happen. And I can promise you this, if you believe that, you start to see your whole world differently. First thing you do is you read my book, Success Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires, or listen to the audio, I'll give it to you, not a problem. Or read The Millionaire Next Door to find out for 25 years of research into who they are and how they think. And you read other books on research on millionaires, and you start to think, hey, I'm one of them. I'm reading this book all about millionaires. Hey, these are my buds. These are my bros. These are my homies, And you start to think like that. I'm one of them. They're one of me. Pretty soon I'll be in this, and they'll be using stories about me. When you start to think like that, if money is a concern of yours, and I know that money is not a concern for many of you, and we say anybody who says that will lie about other things as well. But the point is that if you start to think that you have a millionaire gene, like you are encoded, you're programmed to be a millionaire, it starts to change everything. That means that you're guaranteed to be a millionaire if you'll just get on with it and start to produce value at a high enough level that you can be paid well and you can hold on to it. That's not a bad idea. So, programming your mind for success, the psychology of becoming says that you are in a constant state of becoming. Each one is in a continuous state of growth and change. And I like to do it like this. It's almost like this is you, and you're continuing moving forward, and you're growing and changing depending upon the information that you're taking in. Now, the great tragedy is that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if you're continually taking in the same old information, whether it's frivolousness or television set or TV or Twitter or something else, if you just keep taking the same thing and keep hanging out with the same people and reading the same papers, then nothing will change. The natural tendency is you just go on forever. But if you start to take in new information and new ideas and read new things and talk to new people, you start to evolve and grow in a different way, in a different direction, and at a different speed. Remember, the natural tendency is for people not to do this. So we say if you want to evolve and grow more rapidly, you must make your goals clear and describe them in detail. Make your goals clear and describe them in detail. The interesting thing is, as soon as you are absolutely clear that you want to achieve a particular goal, you start to get all kinds of ideas to achieve that goal. You start to see all kinds of possibilities. You activate your reticular cortex and you start to see ideas that can help you everywhere. You start to run into people and meet people. You start to see things in the newspaper. It's really quite astonishing. I remember reading a story of a serial entrepreneur, and he'd made many millions of dollars in different businesses. And one day he was reading the Wall Street Journal, and there was a little filler, just a little piece about 2 inches, one column by 2 inches, and it said sales of Italian racing bicycle, imports of Italian racing bicycles increased 37% in the last 12 months. And that's what it was, just a little thing from one of the Department of Trade publications. So he said, 37% growth rate, that's pretty good. He said, I wonder why that is. So he started to do some research. And what he found was, this is many years ago, is Italian racing bicycles, which is very popular today, were almost unknown in the US. And a 37% increase meant that they'd imported 1,000 the year before, and they'd imported 1,370 this year for a bicycle market of maybe 25 million bicycle riders. So he began doing some inquiries. He sent away for some information. He got in touch with the major Italian bicycle manufacturers. He opened a store that was a bicycle. He actually went to a bicycle store and agreed to take half the space. He imported the bicycles. He advertised, and they started to sell. By the time he was finished, he had 32 stores selling Italian bicycles by the shipload, and he made something like $15, $20 million before he sold the business. It all came from just noticing that little notice. But the thing is, he was looking for the notice. He was looking for business ideas. My friend Peter Thomas was sitting on a beach, and it's an entrepreneur. He was from Canada, from Vancouver, sitting on a beach in Hawaii and reading the Wall Street Journal. And it talked about this new franchise for real estate offices that had just started up in Irvine, California, where they were combining mom and pop real estate companies into a single company and putting the banner on it so they had nationwide exposure. He got up from the beach, he went back to the hotel, he checked out, he flew to Irvine, he had no money, flew to Irvine, walked into the offices of Century 21 and said, I'd like to buy the franchise for Canada. And they said, Canada, where's that? I said, big blob of land up to the north. He said, well, you can have it. How much is it worth? He said, I'll give you $10,000. I'll give you $5,000 now and $5,000 in a year. He said, good, you can have it. He signed the agreement right there. Exclusive rights for Century 21 for Canada. Today, they have like 500 offices in Canada. He's a multi-millionaire retired, living in Phoenix. He was well known throughout the country as one of the great entrepreneurs. He made an absolute fortune from one little story, but he was looking for the story. So when you start to think that you want to make a lot of money, you're going to see, it's almost like opportunity is going to be waving, hey, here I am, hey, me, pay attention to me, read this. And people will come up to you and say, here's a great business opportunity. Say, no, I'm waiting to make my first million. No, you nitwit, that's probably it. Anyway, so keep your mind open, because once you're clear about it, you're going to start to attract opportunities for everything you could possibly accomplish. Now, you must dwell on them most of the time. Remember, you cannot have a goal and think about it once a month. It's just like being married and thinking about your family once a month. It does not really mean you're really committed. It's like the story of you've heard the story of the chicken and the pig on Farmer Brown's farm. And it's Sunday morning, and the chicken comes to the pig and says, you know, Farmer Brown's been pretty good to us. Let's give him a ham and egg breakfast. What do you say? I'll provide the eggs and you provide the ham. And the chicken pointed out to him, he said, the pig pointed out to the chicken, he said, well, for you it's a donation, but for me it represents a big commitment. Well, you have to make a big commitment in order to achieve a goal. So there are two obstacles to becoming everything you are capable of becoming. Obstacle number one is homeostasis. Homeostasis, depending on what side of the country you live in, is called a hardening of the attitudes. It means that you become rigid and fixed in the way that you think. Homeostasis is another rephrasing of the comfort zone. It's a major reason that people don't grow is because they get locked into what they've already done in the past, and they're very uneasy about doing something new. Whenever someone suggests something new, and you use those miraculous words, yes, but, it means that you're probably trapped into homeostasis, the status quo. Yes, but what about this? You could do this or you could do that, but yes, but. And it always brings you back to what you were doing before. So we like to maintain the status quo. Human beings love the comfort zone. The second obstacle to change is psychosclerosis. And psychosclerosis is, as I say, the hardening of the attitudes. What that means is that you become very rigid in your thinking, and you're not willing to try new things. This is normally caused by low self-esteem and by fear. Is we don't want to try something new. What if we lose our money? I remember when I was growing up, by the time I was 15, I was earning more than my father was. I had my own lawn mowing business, and I had to buy my own equipment. I had beautiful equipment, and I had to get them to sign for it because I was only 15. And I cannot tell you how hard it was. They said, but what if you lose your money? And what if you lose the machine? And what if you lose this? And I mean, they always talked about what would happen if you lose, if it doesn't work out. And because my parents had gone through the Depression and were just hypersensitive about losing. And as a result, the only thing my father ever bought was penny stocks. And you know something? Every one of those penny stocks ended up worth how much? A penny, yeah. And so be alert to these, the natural tendency to slip into a comfort zone and fight to stay there, and the natural tendency to resist new ideas. So both of these lead to getting stuck in the comfort zone, the great enemy of success. In order to get yourself out of the comfort zone, they found that if I like to use an example like this. When Warren Bennis did his study called Leaders, which was one of the best-selling book on leadership of the 90s, they studied 93 leaders, and they studied them for 5 years to find out what qualities they had that made them different. And they were completely different industries, and they found there were 5. And one of them was they refused to get stuck in a comfort zone. And so what they did is they would get into a comfort zone. We say the only difference between a comfort zone and a rut is the depth. No, between a rut and a grave is the depth. And where they would get into this comfort zone very quickly, and the only way they could get out is by using a grappling hook, if you like, and throwing a grappling hook up to pull themselves out of the comfort zone, and it was always a big goal. Now, they have another word for this now, and they call it a BHOG, big, hairy, audacious goal. And so what you do is by creating BHOGs, you're forced out of your comfort zone because you cannot stay at your current level of performance and set a big goal for yourself. The goal forces you to think bigger, which is why we talked about putting a 0 at the end of your income goal. It forces you. There's no way that you could achieve that doing what you're now doing. You're going to have to do something different, and you're going to have to do it in a different place in a different way. So the bigger the goals you have, the more likely it is you break out of the hold of homeostasis and psychosclerosis. So we say there are 2 great powers that control everything that happens to you. The first is the power of love. The power of love is the greatest power in our lives. It's been said that everything we do is either to get love or to compensate for lack of love. From the time we are children, moving from discomfort toward comfort, moving from pain toward pleasure, we're always striving to get the unconditional love and affection and respect of the people who are most important to us. And remember I said earlier that we strive for all of our adult life to compensate for what we felt we were deprived of as children. And so you can see, I came from a family that had no money, so I've always strived to be financially successful. Striven, I think is the word. Striven. Reminds me of a story in terms of past tense of this woman from Boston, a businesswoman, is on a business trip, and she gets to Halifax. And there is a dish in Boston that's very popular. It's called Boston scrod. And it's a dish that comes from the fish and they're caught off the waters of the Northeast. So she checks into this hotel in Halifax. Should I tell this story? Probably not tell this story. She checks into this hotel in Halifax, and she's been traveling all day. And she says, I've been traveling all day. Is there any place around here that I can get scrod? And the desk clerk says, well, yes, madam, there's several places, but I've never heard it asked for in the past pluperfect subjunctive before. Anyway, Everything, I was too quick for you, I can see that, all right. Everything we do is either to get love or to compensate for the lack of love. And it's love, it's approval. People who have an extremely high need for love are driven into politics, into show business, they're into areas. Do you remember that wonderful line from Sally Fields when she got the Academy Award? You like me? You really like me? I mean, this was the greatest thing in her life, is that the people that were her peers in Hollywood, they really liked her, and they gave her the Academy Award because all her life she has been striving for love and acceptance from her peers. The second great power that controls everything that happens to you is the power of suggestion. And you and I are inordinately suggestive in that we're constantly affected by the suggestive elements in our world. Everything counts. Every single word we hear, every conversation we have, every song we listen to or news story, everything we read has an effect on us, and it's helping us or hurting us. Everything counts. Everything counts. If I were to say to you, geez, there's some great research. It says that if you eat really, really healthy foods, you're going to feel much better and have more energy and sleep better, and your skin will be better, and your digestion will be better, and everything else if you eat really, really good foods. Did you know that? You'd say, come on, give us a break. We've known that for 50 years. We know what we should eat, we just don't eat it because we like delicious things. And really good foods are not always delicious. So, of course, we know that. But if I were to say that everything that you take into your mind affects your personality and your temperament and your self-confidence and your goals and your clarity and your intelligence, it has a profound transforming effect, you'd say, wow, that's an interesting thought. Everything you take into your physical body affects you physically. Everything you take into your mind affects you mentally and emotionally, and it affects the results that you get in life. For example, when Barbara and I found that Christina was on her way, we went out and bought more than 30 books on child raising. And we read them back and forth and discussed them for 9 months. We had read thousands and tens of thousands of words on child raising. And after our children were born, we read baby's first 3 months of life, baby's first 6 months, baby's first year, baby's second year, and so on, so that we were keeping current with everything that we possibly could, so that we knew what we were doing. Do you think that that had an effect on what kind of parents we were? Flooding our mind with hours and hours of reading on how to raise happy, healthy children? An enormous impact on our parenting because we flooded our mind with it. I then meet people who have children who have never read a book, never taken a course, never read an article, never talked to anybody. They say, oh, you just do it naturally. You wonder why your kids are wearing their pants down to their ankles and have got earrings in their nose and mohawk haircuts and smoking dope and drinking, and they're 9 years old, aren't they? Number 6, the law of habit has an inordinate impact. The law of habit or inertia says that in the absence, the law of inertia says in the absence of a specific decision on your part to change some aspect of your life, the natural tendency will to go on the same way indefinitely. In other words, inertia says that a body in motion tends to remain in motion indefinitely in the same direction. And a body at rest tends to remain at rest. And unless you make a decision to do something different, you remain at rest. Einstein had a wonderful line. He said, nothing happens until something moves. Nothing happens until something moves. So it's really important that you think of moving. So, I say 95% of everything we do is by habit. And 95% of your success or failure will be determined by your habits, either good or bad. I've written a book on this called $1 Million Habits, which is a great book. And it takes 12 critical categories of life: health, money, technology, learning, growth, family, relationships, and so on. And it gives the habits that the top people have in each of those areas. The interesting thing is that no one is born with any habits. It's all habits that we have learned through practice and repetition over time. And we can override bad habits with good habits. Sometimes people have a smoking habit. How do you get over the smoking habit? You develop habits that override that habit. Exercise, self-discipline, not putting yourself in harm's way, not going to places where they smoke. You do everything possible to develop a new habit until you have the non-smoking habit. There's some people who had been chronic smokers, now they're chronic non-smokers. They're religious about not smoking. So you can develop any habit you need to develop. And 95% of what you do is habit. From the time you get up and brush your teeth in the morning, to the way you mix your coffee, to the way you drive your car or park it, to the way you dress, everything's a habit. Now, there are some habits that are good to have because they make things automatic and easy. You don't even have to think about them. There are other habits that can be very, very harmful and need to be challenged if they are not serving you. My friend Ed Foreman said the rule of success, he said, he said, good habits are hard to form, but easy to live with. Bad habits are easy to form, but hard to live with. And the rule is to form good habits and make them your masters. And so what you say to yourself, if I had a habit of this, being punctual, a habit of planning every day in advance, a habit of exercising for 30 to 60 minutes each morning when I get up, a habit of going to bed by 10 o'clock, if I had these habits, would they serve my life? Well, surprise, surprise, you look around and find really successful people, they have these habits. And nobody had them to start with. So Goethe said, with regard to habits, everything is hard before it's easy. The reason that people do not develop good habits is because they're lazy and undisciplined. They just simply cannot stick to it until the habit locks in and becomes automatic and easy. But here's the good deal, is that once the habit is locked in, it's easier to do it than not to do it, because it becomes your new comfort zone. And you are only comfortable when you are performing with that new habit in that new range. So developing new habits is important. Now, how do you develop habits? Well, the biggest mistake that a person makes is say, well, I want to develop all of these habits. No, develop one a month for the next year. Pick the habit. Say, well, if I went early to bed, early to rise, that would really help me because I get a good night's sleep and I'd be up, I could plan my day, and I'd be able to start early, okay? Or if I did all of my shopping at one time so I didn't have to shop during the week. Or if I was punctual for every appointment. Or if I spent an hour a day studying my craft. Whatever it happens to be, pick one habit and do that for a month. And don't make exceptions. Do it every single day for a month until it locks in. At the end of the month, it's locked in, and then develop a second habit. And say, what would be a good habit for me to have? And plan all my finances carefully and review all my expenditures every single day so I'm really clear about how much in, how much out, where it's going, and so on, as opposed to the way I do it today. Well, if you develop one habit a month for a year, you'll have developed 12 new habits. If you develop 12 new habits, you'll have reprogrammed yourself completely in 12 different areas of performance. Do you think that would have an effect on your life? Do you know what a profound effect 12 new self-chosen good habits could have? It could so profoundly change your life as to be unbelievable. Barbara and I developed the habit, we both wanted to lose some weight, developed the habit of what we call salads at 6. So we have a salad at 6 o'clock with protein, fish, meat, chicken, just a nice salad at 6 o'clock. It's early, and it's too early to drink, so you don't drink. So you have salads at 6, and that lasts you all the way through to the next day, because you don't need to eat again for 12 hours after you've eaten dinner. And if you have salads at 6 and no dessert, you know what happens? You have more energy, you're fresher, you're brighter, you sleep less, you wake up more refreshed, and you lose weight from the first day. You have salads at 6 and you do that for 30 days, you totally transform your way of eating. And at the end of 30 days, physically, the difference will be people will be stopping you in the street and saying, what are you doing? Because you look so different and you feel so different. Now, since you have more energy, what are you going to do with that energy? You're probably going to get up in the morning and exercise. So now you have salads at 6 and morning exercise. OMG, OMG. Do you see what I'm saying? And then you say, I'm going to plan every day in advance and set priorities on my day and start with my most important task. Now we're starting to double and triple because each of these new habits is having a multiplier effect against the other habits. In what seems to be a very short period of time, and you will know, a week, a month, a year can go by like a blink. In 1 year, you'd be a totally different person. And here's the wonderful thing. Each time you engage in a behavior that leads to a better habit, your self-esteem goes up and your self-confidence goes up. You get a backflow of endorphins, which gives you a feeling of happiness and well-being. So you not only get paid off as a result of achieving the habit and the results of the habit, you get paid off every step you take to develop a new positive habit. Makes you happy, gives you positive feedback, gives you ideas, makes you more creative. You literally start to transform your personality by taking one step at a time, developing one habit a month. Just an aside, no extra charge for that.